The crystal wine glass shattered against the marble floor, and Yara's entire body went rigid. Mrs. Whitmore's shrill voice cut through the elegant dinner party like a blade. "You clumsy girl! Do you have any idea how much that cost?" Yara's hands trembled as she knelt to pick up the pieces, her black uniform dress riding up slightly as she crouched. Around her, the guests, dripping in diamonds and designer suits, stopped their conversations to watch. Some looked uncomfortable. Most looked entertained. "I'm so sorry, Mrs. Whitmore," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "It slipped." "Slipped?" The woman's laugh was cruel. "You people are always making excuses. Maybe if you spent less time daydreaming and more time paying attention." That's when she heard it. A chair scraping against the floor, slow, deliberate. The entire room went silent. Yara looked up from the floor and her breath caught. At the head of the table a man was standing, tall, devastatingly handsome, and absolutely terrifying. Sebastian Rizzo hadn't said a single word all evening. Now, as he rose to his full height, every person in that room understood what power looked like. 3 hours earlier, Yara Mitchell had stood in the staff bathroom of the Whitmore mansion, staring at her reflection and trying to summon courage she didn't feel. "You can do this," she whispered to herself. "It's just one night. The money is good. You need the money." She needed more than good money. She needed a miracle. Her mother's medical bills were piling up, her student loans were in default, and her landlord had given her until the end of the month. This private catering job paid 3 times her usual rate. She couldn't afford to mess it up. The Whitmore estate was everything Yara's world wasn't. Sprawling, excessive, beautiful in a way that felt almost violent when you spent your days scraping by on minimum wage and prayer. She'd taken the bus 3 hours to get here, then walked another 20 minutes because she couldn't afford the Uber. "Mitchell!" The head caterer, a stern woman named Ms. Chen, appeared in the doorway. "You're on wine service. The guests are arriving." Yara smoothed her uniform, a simple black dress that the agency had provided, and followed Ms. Chen into the main dining room. Her breath caught despite herself. The table was set for 20 people with china so delicate it looked like it would shatter if you breathed on it wrong. Crystal chandeliers cast everything in a warm, golden glow. "Remember," Ms. Chen whispered sharply, "you don't speak unless spoken to. You don't make eye contact. You're invisible, understood?" Yara nodded, gripping the wine bottle like a lifeline. The guests began arriving at 7 sharp. Yara recognized some of them from magazines and news articles, tech CEOs, old money socialites, a few politicians. They moved through the room like they owned the air itself, their laughter loud and careless. Mrs. Whitmore held court at the center, a woman in her 50s who'd married into wealth and wielded it like a weapon. "Make sure the Montrachet is properly chilled," she'd snapped at Yara earlier. "And if you break anything, it comes out of your pay." Yara had simply nodded. She was used to women like Mrs. Whitmore, women who looked through her like she was furniture. Then he arrived. The room didn't exactly go quiet, but something shifted. Yara felt it from her position near the sideboard, a change in air pressure like a storm rolling in. Sebastian Rizzo entered alone, without fanfare, but every eye tracked him. He was tall, well over 6 feet, with dark hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, sharp jawline, intense dark eyes, a tailored navy suit that probably cost more than Yara made in a year. But it wasn't his looks that made her pulse quicken. It was the way everyone else reacted to him, the subtle straightening of spines, the nervous smiles, the way Mr. Whitmore rushed forward to greet him like he was royalty. "Mr. Rizzo," Mr. Whitmore said, his voice just a shade too loud. "We're honored you could join us." Sebastian's handshake was brief, his expression unreadable. "Whitmore." His voice was deep, measured. He spoke like every word was intentional. Yara watched from the corner as he took his seat at the head of the table, the position of honor, though he didn't seem particularly honored. He looked bored, dangerous, like a predator tolerating prey. "Wine, dear," Ms. Chen hissed, nudging Yara forward. Her heart hammered as she approached the table, starting with the guests furthest from Sebastian. Her hands were steady. Years of waitressing had taught her that. But her awareness of him was like a physical thing. She could feel his presence even with her back turned. She made her way around the table, refilling glasses, murmuring quiet "excuse me's" that no one acknowledged. She was invisible, just like Miss Chen said, until she reached him. Yara approached Sebastian's right side, wine bottle ready. He was looking at his phone, his expression dark. She could see a scar, small, precise, just below his left ear. A tattoo peeked out from his collar, something in Italian script. "Wine, sir?" she asked softly. He didn't look up, just gave the slightest nod. Yara leaned in to pour, hyper-aware of the expensive cologne he wore, something dark and woody, and the absolute stillness of his posture. Unlike the other guests, who were animated and loud, Sebastian sat like a king among jesters. Her hand was steady, the pour was perfect. She was already pulling away when it happened. Mrs. Whitmore's voice rang out from the other end of the table. "Careful with Mr. Rizzo's glass, girl. That wine cost more than your entire year's salary." Laughter rippled around the table, cruel, casual. Yara's cheeks burned, but she kept her expression neutral. "Yes, ma'am." She stepped back, but Mrs. Whitmore wasn't done. "I swear good help is so hard to find these days, they send us anyone off the street." More laughter. Yara's fingers tightened on the wine bottle, but she kept her eyes down. "Just get through tonight, just get through." "Actually," a deep voice said, cutting through the chatter like a blade. The pour was excellent. Every head turned. Sebastian hadn't looked up from his phone, but he'd spoken. His voice was quiet, but it carried absolute authority. Mrs. Whitmore's smile faltered. "Oh, well, of course, Mr. Rizzo." The conversation shifted quickly, desperately away from the uncomfortable moment, but Yara stood frozen, her heart pounding in her ears. As she stepped back toward the sideboard, she could have sworn she felt his eyes on her. When she dared a glance, Sebastian was still looking at his phone, but there was the faintest curve to his mouth that hadn't been there before. The night continued, and Yara tried to blend into the background, but she was about to learn that some people can't be ignored, and some insults demand a reckoning. Dinner service proceeded with the kind of performative elegance that only the obscenely wealthy could pull off. 7 courses, 4 wines, conversations that danced around business deals and social scandals with practiced ease. Yara moved through it all like a ghost, refilling glasses and clearing plates. She'd learned the choreography: approach from the left, retreat to the right, never interrupt, never engage. But she could feel Sebastian watching her. Not obviously, not in a way anyone else would notice, but every time she entered his line of sight, she felt the weight of his attention. It was unnerving, thrilling, terrifying. By the 4th course, some elaborate duck preparation that probably cost more than her rent, Mrs. Whitmore was 3 glasses deep and getting louder. "Did you see what Senator Morrison wore to the gala?" she announced to the table. "Absolutely tragic. Money can't buy taste, apparently." The guests tittered on cue. Sebastian said nothing, barely touched his food. Yara was clearing salad plates when she overheard 2 women whispering near her. "Is it true about him?" one asked. "Every word," the other breathed. "They say he controls half the port, that politicians won't make a move without his approval. And that business with the Castellano family—" "Shh, not here." Yara's hands stilled for just a moment. She'd heard rumors, of course. Everyone in New York had heard of the Rizzo family, old money with roots that went deep and dark. But rumors were one thing. Having the man sitting 10 feet away was another. She glanced at him despite herself. Sebastian was looking directly at her. Their eyes met for exactly 3 seconds. His expression was unreadable, but something passed between them. Acknowledgement, maybe. Or warning. Yara looked away quickly, her pulse racing. "More wine," Mrs. Whitmore called, waving her empty glass. "Today, if you don't mind." Yara grabbed a fresh bottle and made her way to the woman's side. As she poured, Mrs. Whitmore didn't even look at her, too busy holding court about her recent trip to the Amalfi Coast. "The service was impeccable," she was saying, "not like here. Americans just don't understand proper hospitality. In Italy, they train their staff properly." Yara's jaw tightened, but she kept pouring. "Of course, the language barrier can be such a problem," Mrs. Whitmore continued. "Half the time you have no idea what they're—" The wine bottle slipped. It wasn't much, just a fraction of an inch, but it was enough. A drop of red wine splashed onto the pristine white tablecloth, dangerously close to Mrs. Whitmore's plate. The woman's head snapped around. "What did you just do?" "I'm sorry," Yara said quickly, setting down the bottle and reaching for a napkin. "I'll clean—" "Sorry." Mrs. Whitmore's voice rose. "Do you have any idea how much this tablecloth costs? This is imported Irish linen." The table went quiet. All eyes turned to them. Yara's hands shook as she dabbed at the tiny spot. "It's just a drop, Mrs. Whitmore. I can—" "Just a drop?" The woman stood, her face flushed with wine and anger. "You people are all the same. Careless, sloppy, no attention to detail. You people." The words hung in the air like poison. Yara's stomach dropped. She could feel every eye on her. The pity, the discomfort, the few that looked almost gleeful at the drama. "I apologize," she said, her voice steady despite the humiliation burning in her chest. "It won't happen again." "You're right it won't," Mrs. Whitmore snapped, "because you're going to clean this up properly and then you're going to apologize to my guests for disrupting their evening." The room was silent. Someone cleared their throat uncomfortably. Yara's mind raced. She needed this job, needed the money, but the way Mrs. Whitmore was looking at her, like she was something dirty that needed to be scrubbed away. "Mrs. Whitmore," Mr. Whitmore interjected weakly, "perhaps we should just—" "No," his wife cut him off. "I'm tired of lowering my standards. Tired of making excuses for incompetence." She turned back to Yara. "Well, I'm waiting." Yara wanted to run, wanted to tell this woman exactly where she could shove her imported Irish linen, but she had $73 in her bank account and a mother who needed medication that insurance wouldn't cover. So she knelt. She knelt on the marble floor in front of 20 strangers and began picking up a napkin she'd dropped, her vision blurring with unshed tears. "Now apologize," Mrs. Whitmore commanded, "properly." Yara opened her mouth, the words bitter on her tongue. That's when she heard it, a chair scraping, slow, deliberate. She looked up. Sebastian Rizzo was standing. The silence that fell over the room was absolute. Sebastian didn't rush. He stood with the kind of unhurried confidence that came from never being questioned. Every eye tracked him as he set down his napkin with precise care and buttoned his suit jacket with one hand. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said quietly. His voice was soft, but it cut through the room like a blade. "Sit down." It wasn't a request. The woman's face went pale, then flushed red. "Mr. Rizzo, I don't think you understand—" "I understand perfectly." He took a step forward. Just one. The bodyguards who'd been stationed near the walls shifted slightly. "You humiliated someone who works for you, in front of guests over a drop of wine. She was careless. She was perfect." Sebastian's eyes were dark, cold. "Her service has been flawless all evening. You, on the other hand, have been drunk since the second course and rude since the first." Mrs. Whitmore looked like she'd been slapped. "How dare you? Sit down!" This time she did, slowly, like her legs couldn't quite hold her. Sebastian's gaze swept the table. Several guests suddenly found their plates fascinating. Anyone else have something to say about the stuff? No one spoke. He turned to Yara, who was still kneeling on the floor, her mind struggling to process what was happening. When he extended his hand to her, she stared at it like it might burn her. "Get up," he said, softer now. "Please." Yara's hand trembled as she placed it in his. His grip was firm, warm, as he helped her to her feet. She was acutely aware of how close he was, close enough that she could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes, the shadow of stubble along his jaw. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice low enough that only she could hear. She shook her head, not trusting her voice. "Good." He didn't let go of her hand immediately. His thumb brushed across her knuckles once, so briefly she almost thought she'd imagined it. Then he released her and turned back to the table. "I'm leaving," Sebastian announced. "Whitmore, we'll discuss the port contract another time, when you've learned how to treat people with basic human decency." "Mr. Rizzo, please." Mr. Whitmore stood, panic written across his face. "I'm sure we can't." Sebastian pulled out his phone, typed something quickly. "My driver will be here in 3 minutes." He started toward the door, then paused, turned back, looked directly at Yara. "You," he said. What's your name? Her mouth went dry. Yara Mitchell. Yara. He said it like he was testing the weight of it. How much are they paying you tonight? She blinked. $200. Something flickered in his expression. Anger, maybe, or disgust. Miss Chen, he called to the head caterer, who'd appeared in the doorway. Cut her a check for 5,000. Tonight's tips. Miss Chen's eyes widened. Mr. Rizzo, I don't have the authority. You do now. He pulled out his wallet, extracted a black card, and set it on the sideboard. Charge it to this, and if anyone gives you trouble, call my office. I can't, Yara started. You can. He met her eyes again, and she saw something there that made her breath catch. Not pity, something else, something intense. Consider it hazard pay for dealing with people who don't deserve you. Then he was gone, his bodyguards falling in behind him like shadows. The dining room erupted in whispers the moment the front door closed. Mrs. Whitmore looked like she might cry or scream or both. Mr. Whitmore was already on his phone, probably trying to do damage control, but Yara just stood there, her hand still tingling where Sebastian had held it, her mind reeling. Miss Chen appeared at her elbow. Go change, she said quietly. I'll handle the check. I don't understand, Yara whispered. Why would he? I don't know. Miss Chen's expression was unreadable. But Sebastian Rizzo doesn't do anything without a reason. You should probably think about that. Yara didn't think about it. She tried very hard not to think about it. She took the bus home, the check from Miss Chen folded in her pocket like a secret, $5,000. It was more than she made in 3 months, enough to pay her mother's medical bills, enough to buy her some breathing room, enough to scare her a little, because men like Sebastian Rizzo didn't hand out $5,000 to maids they'd met once. Men like that didn't risk important business deals to defend someone they didn't know, unless they wanted something. The thought kept her up that night, staring at her ceiling in the tiny studio apartment she could barely afford. What did he want? And more importantly, what would she do when he came to collect? She got her answer 3 days later. Yara was pulling a double shift at the diner, her regular job, where she made $8 an hour plus tips, and her feet ached by noon, when a man in an expensive suit walked in. He looked completely out of place among the cracked vinyl booths and faded linoleum. Every head turned as he made his way directly to Yara's section. Yara Mitchell, he asked. Her hands tightened on her order pad. Yes? My name is Marco. I work for Mr. Rizzo. He set a business card on her table, heavy cardstock, embossed. He'd like to speak with you today, if possible. Her heart hammered. About what? He didn't say. Marco's expression was professionally neutral, but he asked me to assure you that you're not in any trouble. He simply has a proposition he'd like to discuss. A proposition. The words sent a chill down her spine. And if I say no? She asked. Marco smiled slightly. Then I'll tell him you said no, and that will be the end of it. Mr. Rizzo doesn't force anyone to do anything they don't want to do. Yara looked down at the card, Sebastian's name in elegant script, an address in Manhattan, probably his office. She should say no, should throw the card away and forget any of this ever happened. But $5,000 was sitting in her bank account. Her mother's medication was paid for. And some small, reckless part of her wanted to know what he wanted to see him again. When? She heard herself ask. I have a car outside. Whenever you're ready. The building was in Midtown, all glass and steel, the kind of place where doormen wore better suits than Yara owned. Marco led her through a marble lobby to a private elevator that required a key card to operate. Penthouse, he said simply, pressing the button for the top floor. Yara's stomach dropped as they rose. She'd changed out of her diner uniform into the nicest thing she owned, a simple navy dress she'd bought at a thrift store. It felt inadequate. Everything about this felt inadequate. The elevator doors opened directly into an apartment. No, not an apartment. A space that made the Whitmore mansion look quaint. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Manhattan skyline. The furniture was modern and expensive. Everything was black, white, and chrome, except for one wall that was covered in what looked like original artwork. Mr. Rizzo will be with you shortly. Marco said, gesturing to a leather sofa. "Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee?" "I'm fine," Yara managed, though she wasn't fine at all. Marco nodded and disappeared into another room, leaving her alone. Yara didn't sit. She walked to the windows, trying to steady her breathing. Below, the city stretched out like a glittering circuit board. She'd lived in New York her whole life, but she'd never seen it from this high up, from this far away. "Beautiful, isn't it?" She spun around. Sebastian stood in the doorway and her breath caught. He'd changed from the suit she'd seen him in at dinner. Now he wore dark slacks and a white dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up, revealing forearms that were all muscle and ink. His hair was slightly disheveled, like he'd been running his hands through it. He looked more human this way, and somehow more dangerous. "Mr. Rizzo," she said. "Sebastian." He moved into the room with that same deliberate grace she remembered. "Please, we're past formalities, don't you think?" "I'm not sure what we're past." She lifted her chin, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "Your assistant said you had a proposition." "Direct." A slight smile curved his mouth. "I like that." He gestured to the sofa. "Please, sit. This might take a minute." Yara perched on the edge of the leather cushion. Sebastian sat across from her in an armchair, leaning back with one ankle crossed over his knee. Casual, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. "First," he said, "I want to apologize for putting you in an awkward position the other night. I know my intervention probably made things uncomfortable for you." "You mean when you defended me from a racist, drunk woman?" Yara's voice was sharper than she intended. "Yeah, super uncomfortable." His eyebrow arched. "You've got a spine. Good, you'll need it." "For what?" Sebastian was quiet for a moment, studying her. Then he leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "How much do you know about me, Yara?" "I know what everyone knows, that you're rich, powerful, that people are scared of you." She paused. "That your family has connections." Connections. He smiled without humor. "That's one word for it. Yes, my family has connections. Some of them are even legal." He said it so casually, like he was talking about the weather. "I'm going to be honest with you," Sebastian continued, "because I think you deserve honesty, and because I think you're smart enough to handle it. My family built an empire on things that would make most people uncomfortable. We operate in gray areas. We have for generations." Yara's mouth went dry. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I'm about to ask you to do something, and I need you to understand what you'd be getting into." He stood, walked to the window. 3 weeks from now, I have to attend a series of events. Business dinners, charity galas, a wedding. He turned back to her. "I need a date." She blinked. "You need a... what?" "Someone to accompany me. Someone who can handle themselves in uncomfortable situations. Someone who won't be intimidated by..." He gestured vaguely. "All of this. You want to hire me to be your date?" The laugh that escaped her was slightly hysterical. "You could have any woman in New York. Why? Because they're all the same." He cut her off. "Boring. Predictable. They want my money or my name or my connections. You..." His gaze was intense. "You looked at me like I was a person. Not a weapon, not a wallet, a person." Yara's heart pounded. "I still don't understand why... My mother is dying." The words hung in the air between them. Sebastian's expression didn't change, but she saw something flicker in his eyes. Pain, carefully controlled. "Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. She has maybe 6 months. And her dying wish, the only thing she's asked for in 40 years of watching me live this life, is to see me happy. Settled. With someone who gives a damn about something other than status. So you want me to lie to your dying mother? I want you to help her die in peace." His jaw tightened. "I can't give her what she really wants. A son who walks away from all this, who lives a normal, safe life. But I can give her the illusion of it. For a few weeks. Until..." He didn't finish. Didn't need to. Yara stood, her legs shaky. This was insane. All of it. What exactly would this involve? Accompanying me to events. Meeting my family. Acting like we're... He paused. Involved. seriously involved. For how long? A month, maybe 2, depending on... Another pause. Depending on how things progress with her illness. And after you walk away with $100,000, cash, no strings attached. Yara's vision swam. $100,000. That was life-changing money. That was her mother's medical bills paid for life. That was college loans eliminated. That was breathing room she'd never had. But it was also Sebastian Rizzo's world. A world she knew nothing about, a world that scared her. "I need to think about it," she said. "Of course." He pulled out his phone, typed something. "Take your time, but I'll need an answer by tomorrow night. My mother's birthday party is this weekend, and I'd like you there if you agree." Her phone buzzed. She looked down to see a notification, a deposit. $10,000. "What is this?" she whispered. "A retainer. Whether you take the job or not, it's yours. Consider it an apology for dragging you into this." Yara looked up at him, this beautiful, dangerous man who was offering her more money than she'd ever seen to pretend to love him for his dying mother. "I don't understand you," she said quietly. "Good." Something flickered in his expression, something almost vulnerable. "That makes 2 of us." Yara said yes, not immediately. She spent the night pacing her apartment, making lists of pros and cons, calling her best friend Keisha, who told her she was insane, but also, "Girl, get that bag." But in the end, there was really only one answer. $100,000. Her mother's medical care secured, a chance to breathe, and maybe, just maybe, a curiosity about Sebastian Rizzo that she couldn't quite ignore. The next evening, Marco picked her up in a black Mercedes. He handed her a garment bag before she even got in the car. "For the party," he explained. "Mr. Rizzo wanted to make sure you had something appropriate." Inside was a dress that probably cost more than her rent. Deep emerald green silk, elegant without being flashy, shoes that actually fit. A small envelope with a note in sharp, masculine handwriting. "You don't owe me anything, but you deserve to feel beautiful." As her throat tightened as she read it, the party was at Sebastian's childhood home, a massive estate in Westchester that made the Whitmore mansion look like a cottage. The driveway was lined with expensive cars and men in dark suits who watched everything with sharp eyes. Sebastian met her at the entrance. He wore a charcoal grey suit that fit him perfectly, his hair styled back, his expression unreadable. But when he saw her in the dress, something flickered across his face. "You look..." He stopped, started again. "You look beautiful." "It's the dress," she said automatically. "No." His gaze held hers. "It's not." Before she could respond, he offered his arm. "Ready?" "No," she admitted. "Good. Honesty. I like that." His mouth quirked. "My family's going to eat you alive if you're too perfect. A little nerves makes you real." The house was full of people. Easily 100 guests, maybe more. Music played from somewhere. Waiters circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. It looked like every other high society party Yara had served at, except she wasn't serving tonight. Sebastian kept her close, his hand at the small of her back, as he navigated through the crowd. People stopped him constantly, business associates, family members, friends. He introduced her simply as Yara, without explanation. And the speculation in their eyes was palpable. "Sebastian!" A woman's voice cut through the noise. "There you are." Yara turned to see an elegant older woman approaching, probably in her 60s, thin in a way that spoke of illness, but with the same sharp, intelligent eyes as Sebastian. His mother. "Mama." Sebastian's entire demeanor softened. He leaned down to kiss her cheek. "You look beautiful." "And you brought someone." Maria Rizzo's gaze landed on Yara, and there was no missing the hope in her expression. "Finally." "Mama, this is Yara Mitchell. Yara, my mother, Maria." "It's lovely to meet you, Mrs. Rizzo," Yara said, extending her hand. Maria took it, but she didn't shake. She held it, her grip surprisingly strong. "Call me Maria, please." Her eyes searched Yara's face. "How did you two meet?" Yara's mind went blank. They hadn't discussed this. "She put me in my place," Sebastian said smoothly. At a dinner party. I was being an ass, and she called me on it. I've been trying to make it up to her ever since. It wasn't quite a lie. Close enough. Maria's smile was radiant. Finally, someone who doesn't let you intimidate them. She turned to Yara. You have to tell me everything. Come, let's get you some wine and leave Sebastian to his business friends. Before Yara could protest, Maria had linked their arms and was leading her away. She shot Sebastian a panicked look over her shoulder. He just smiled and mouthed, "You're doing great." The next hour was a blur. Maria introduced her to what felt like every member of the Rizzo extended family, aunts, uncles, cousins, family friends. Everyone wanted to know about Sebastian's girlfriend. Everyone had opinions, but Maria herself was wonderful, warm, funny. She asked Yara about her life with genuine interest, and when Yara mentioned her mother's illness, Maria's hand found hers. "That's so hard," she said quietly, "being the caretaker, the strong one. I know what that's like." Something in her tone made Yara look closer. "You do." Sebastian's father died when he was 16. Car accident. Maria's gaze drifted across the room to where her son stood talking to a group of men. After that it was just us. And this world, she gestured to the party, the house, the wealth. This world didn't care that we were grieving. It wanted what it wanted. So Sebastian learned to be hard. To protect me. To protect himself. "He loves you very much," Yara said softly. "I know." Maria smiled, but there was sadness in it. "Sometimes I wish he loved himself half as much." She turned back to Yara. "But you look at him differently. Not like he's a king, like he's a man." Guilt twisted in Yara's chest. This woman was dying, and here Yara was lying to her face. "Maria, I know my son," Maria interrupted gently. "I know what he is, what he does. I'm not naive about the world he lives in." She squeezed Yara's hand. "But I also know when he's pretending. And right now, when he looks at you, he's not pretending anything." Before Yara could process that, there was a commotion near the entrance. Raised voices. Sebastian's posture went rigid. A man pushed through the crowd, younger than Sebastian, maybe late 20s, with the same dark coloring but none of the control. He was drunk, angry, pointing at Sebastian. "You think you can just cut me out?" he shouted. "I'm family." "Nico." Sebastian's voice was dangerously quiet. "This isn't the place." "Fuck that." Nico stumbled forward. "You gave the port contract to Castellano, to our rivals. After I told you I could handle it, you couldn't handle it. You're a liability." "I'm your blood." The room had gone silent, everyone watching. Maria's hand tightened on Yara's arm. "That boy," she whispered. "My nephew. He's always been troubled." Sebastian moved forward, his jaw tight. "Marco, get him out of here." But Nico wasn't done. His gaze landed on Yara and something ugly crossed his face. "So that's why. You're too busy playing house with—" He didn't finish. Sebastian had him by the throat, slammed against the wall so fast Yara barely saw it happen. "Don't," Sebastian said, his voice deadly quiet. "Don't even think about finishing that sentence." The room held its breath. Then Maria's voice, soft but clear. "Sebastian, let him go." Sebastian released Nico immediately, stepping back. His hands were shaking, barely visible, but Yara saw it. Marco and 2 other men escorted Nico out. The party slowly resumed, people pretending nothing had happened, but Sebastian stood frozen, his shoulders tight, his breathing controlled. Yara moved to him without thinking, touched his arm. "Are you okay?" He looked down at her hand, then at her face. "I should ask you that. I'm sorry you had to see—" "I'm fine." She kept her hand there, feeling the tension vibrate through him. "But you're not." Something cracked in his expression just for a second. "Come with me." He led her through the house, upstairs and down hallways, until they reached what looked like a private study. He closed the door behind them, leaned against it. "I'm sorry," he said again. "Stop apologizing." He was way out of line. "I nearly killed him in front of 100 people, in front of my mother, in front of you. He ran a hand through his hair. You signed up to pretend to date me, not witness me being a monster. You're not a monster. The words came out more forcefully than she intended. You were protecting your mother. Protecting me, that's not monstrous, that's human. He looked at her like she'd said something in a foreign language. You really believe that? He said quietly. I really do. The silence stretched between them. Sebastian pushed off the door, moved closer, not threatening, just closer. I can't figure you out, he said. Most people in your position would be terrified of me. You should be terrified of me. Maybe I am. Yara's heart hammered. But maybe I'm also tired of letting fear make all my decisions. His hand came up, hesitated, then gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was so tender it made her breath catch. You're going to be trouble. Aren't you? He murmured. Probably. He smiled, a real smile that transformed his entire face, made him look younger, almost vulnerable. Then his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, and whatever he saw made him tense. What is it? Yara asked. Security alert. Someone was taking photos outside, probably paparazzi, but he typed something quickly. I need to check it out. Will you be okay here for a minute? I'm fine, go. He hesitated at the door. Yara, thank you. For tonight. For... He gestured vaguely. Seeing me. Then he was gone. Yara sank into a chair, her heart still racing. She'd been here less than 3 hours, and she already felt like she was drowning. She stood needing air and walked to the window. The ground stretched out below, beautiful and manicured. She could see Sebastian outside, talking to security, his posture tense. A sound made her turn. Maria stood in the doorway. I'm sorry, Yara said quickly. I didn't mean to intrude. You're not intruding. Maria came further into the room. This was his father's study. Sebastian comes here when he needs to think. It's beautiful. It's lonely. Maria sat in the chair Sebastian had occupied, looking suddenly fragile. This whole life is lonely. All this money, all this power. It doesn't mean anything if you're alone. You have Sebastian, for now. Maria's smile was sad. But what happens when I'm gone? Who will he have then? The question hung in the air. That's why you want him to find someone, Yara said quietly. I want him to find happiness, to know that there's more to life than duty and responsibility and being strong. Maria's eyes met Yara's. I want him to know what it's like to be loved for who he is, not what he can do. The guilt was crushing now. This woman dying, pouring her heart out to someone who was lying to her. Maria, I have to tell you something. I know, Maria interrupted softly. Yara froze. What? I know this is an arrangement. Sebastian told me. At Yara's shocked expression, she smiled. Not in so many words. But I know my son. He doesn't bring women home. Ever. And then suddenly you're here, and he's looking at you like... She stopped. Well, like he doesn't quite know what to do with you. So why? Because sometimes, Maria said, the best love stories start as something else. And because when you look at him, you see him, not the boss, not the heir, just Sebastian, a man who desperately needs someone to see him. I'm not, Yara struggled for words. I'm not who you think I am. Maybe not yet. Maria stood, crossed to where Yara sat and took her hands. But you could be. If you wanted to be. Yara Mitchell had agreed to a simple business arrangement, but nothing about Sebastian Rizzo or the way he was starting to look at her was simple, and the lines between pretend and real were about to blur beyond recognition. 18 months later, Yara stood in the nursery of the Rizzo penthouse, rocking her daughter Sophia to sleep. Through the window, the Manhattan skyline glittered like a promise. So much had changed since that night at Maria's party. Maria had passed 3 months after Yara agreed to the arrangement, peacefully, in her sleep, with Sebastian holding her hand. At the funeral, Yara had held him while he cried, the first time she'd seen him truly break. She'd stayed. Not for the money, though the 100,000 was safely invested for Sophia's future. She'd stayed because somewhere between the business arrangement and the pretending, she'd fallen completely in love with him, and he'd fallen too. It hadn't been easy. Sebastian's world was complicated, dangerous, full of threats she was still learning to navigate. But he'd never hidden it from her, never lied. And slowly, carefully, he'd opened up, shared his fears, his regrets, his dreams. They'd gotten married 6 months ago in a small ceremony, just family and close friends. Nothing like the elaborate affairs his mother had once hoped for. But it had been perfect. And then Sophia had arrived 3 months ago, a surprise, a joy, a tiny human who had Sebastian wrapped completely around her finger. "Is she asleep?" Sebastian's voice came from the doorway. Yara turned to see her husband leaning against the frame, still in his work suit, his tie loosened. He looked tired, but happy. "Almost," she whispered. He came to stand beside her, his arm wrapping around her waist as they both looked down at their daughter. Sophia had his dark hair, Yara's eyes, and a stubborn streak that came from both of them. "I got the call from the lawyer," Sebastian said quietly. "The Nico situation is resolved. He took the deal." His cousin had been arrested 6 months ago for embezzlement. Sebastian had made sure he got a fair trial, a good lawyer, and a chance at rehabilitation, because that's what Maria would have wanted. "Good," Yara said. "How do you feel?" "Like maybe I'm learning to be a better man." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Thanks to you." "I didn't do anything. You saw me." His arm tightened around her. "When everyone else saw a monster, you saw a man. That changed everything." Yara carefully laid Sophia in her crib, then turned to face Sebastian fully. Even after all this time, his beauty still took her breath away. But now she knew the man beneath it. Flawed, complex, trying every day to be better. "Your mother would be proud," she said softly. "I hope so." He pulled her close, rested his forehead against hers. "I hope she knows I found what she wanted for me. Someone who loves me, not my name, not my money, just me." "Always you," Yara whispered. He kissed her then, slow and sweet, and full of promise. Later, as they stood at the window watching the city sleep, Yara thought about that night at the Whitmore mansion, about the girl who'd knelt on the floor, humiliated and hopeless. That girl would never have believed this was possible, this life, this love, this future. But Sebastian had seen something in her that night, something strong, something worth fighting for, and she'd seen the same in him. Two people from different worlds brought together by chance and choice, by courage and love. It wasn't the fairy tale Maria had dreamed of. It was better. It was real. This story has come to an end. If it touched your heart in any way, leave a like and share it with someone who loves powerful emotional stories. New stories coming soon. Until next time.